Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today I want to discuss a little topic that I still get quite a lot of questions about, even though I did discuss it in quite a couple of live streams and videos already, but I decided to make a separate video nonetheless. That is the question, how do I perform my walkarounds in my videos, and associated with that I will also give you general guidance on what to watch out for your walkarounds. So first of all, how do I do it? Well, we are going to start with some basic camera setup here, so let's have a look into my cam. The general way I do it is that I go to the drone camera, so go over to showcase over here, and then there is two sliders that I really want to deal with in order to get a proper walk-around experience. The first one is the drone speed, and the second is the drone rotation speed. And finally, I have adjusted the drone controls on my keyboard so that I can use the WASD keys in order to move around forward and sideways, the R and F keys in order to move up and down, and finally my numpad in order to look around. So let's have a look into the first settings first. So in order to move around like this, the setting that we need to adjust is the drone speed, and that's the one we got over here. In general, I find 3 to be a very good setting for larger aircraft like the A320 or even the 777. And that provides me with a speed at which I can do a rather quick, maybe a little bit quicker than usual, but rather close to reality speed of moving around like this. If you want to go a little bit closer to a typical pilot's pace, then rather go something like 2, which represents something like this, which is a normal speed that you can walk at in a relaxed manner. Now, evil souls would say if the weather is good, use a speed of 2, if it's rainy or stormy, use a speed of 3. Now, the other setting that matters is the drone rotation speed. That is the setting that we use to look around sideways or up and down like this. And 45 generally works rather well. This is the rotation speed I get at a 45 setting. To give you an example, if we use the default value of 90 over here, or close to 90, then this is what it looks like. You can see this is now looking around pretty quickly, making precise control rather impossible. While if we go down to a speed like 22 or something the likes, then we get a result like this, which makes it rather hard to actually move around. Personally, if we use a drone speed of 2 and a drone rotation speed of 45, that provides a pretty good average for my taste that I'm pretty happy with, especially when combining the different functions, like moving sideways and looking around at the same time. You can use this to make a pretty good turn around the nose gear, for example. You can hear my clicking in the background when I hit the keyboard keys, so right now I'm just keeping everything pressed, and you can see that it's working very well in order to move around the nose wheel. Alright, so let's move on to the second topic of the video. Now that we know how to do the walk around, let's have a look at what to check during the walk around. So generally, walk arounds start close to the one left door, that is the forward left door. And generally there will be a couple of probes on the side of the airplane, like over here. A couple of examples of what all these things are. Over here we've got an AOA sensor that is basically hanging in the wind, and that's moved up and down in order to determine the angle of attack. Over here we've got static ports, and then we are moving around the airplane to the nose wheel. Now, generally when we are looking at landing gear assemblies, the things we are looking for are twofold. Number one is any sort of damages to the actual landing gear assembly. Say, for example, broken taxi lights, broken landing lights, or remains of a bird, or any sort of damage the airplane might have sustained in operation. The other thing we're checking for is liquids. Now, as you can imagine, there are loads of liquids that are in use in a landing gear, such as oil and so on, and we want to make sure that there is nothing leaking. Likewise, we also check the actual tires for any sorts of visible damage. Then moving on to the front of the plane, we got a couple more sensors on the outside, but what's getting really important then is that you take a little bit of a distance from the plane and you just have a look at the aircraft in basically in the complete picture. That is just to see, like, is the airplane maybe dent? Let's say, for example, somebody did a very hard landing on just the left landing gear. Then you might be able to see some visible damages if you look at the plane like this. Now, moving forward then, on the other hand side, obviously we do have a very similar assembly. We also check that the avionics access doors are closed, and we do have a general look at the cargo compartment for any signs of visible damage that might occur during some loading. Now then, moving on to the forward part of the plane. In some aircraft there are air inlets over here that you would check, and in general you check the condition of the leading edges of the wing. Now, moving on to the engines, there's a couple things that we check. We start on the fan blades and on the spinner, and over here we very carefully go along the leading edges of all the fan blades to make sure that there are no signs of any damages whatsoever. For example, in my career I found some damages of some small rocks that we probably ingested on the runway that caused some less than a millimeter big small cracks in the leading edges of the fan blades. Now those are things that can easily be ironed out by engineering, and you don't even have to exchange a fan blade for that usually, but your engineer will be able to provide you with more details. Now, the other thing that you check is on the cowling of the engine for any signs of visible damages. Obviously bird strikes are also something, and in many engines you will find little probes like the one that we see right over here. So all these kind of things you check for on the engines. Now on the side of the engine you check that all the oil access doors are closed, and while unfortunately not visible on this one over here, the good thing that we also check for are the thrust reverser pins. Now generally thrust reversers can be locked in the closed positions in case they are inoperative. And in that case, usually there are some pins sticking out from the engines. So you want to check that if your thrust reversers are written inoperative, then you want to make sure those pins are in. Also, you look beneath the engine, because as you can see, there is not all that much space here between the actual lower side of the engine and the tarmac. Now, if you do land with a certain bank angle or greater, then an engine pot strike might occur on landing, and that is definitely something that you want to rule out. Also, especially on Airbus aircraft, you got those latches of the cowlings down here, and I'm sure you've seen the videos of what happens when those latches are open on takeoff. So this is again something important for pilots to check. Likewise, you want to move to the aft part of the engine and check both the inner side of the core as well as the bypass part of the engine for any remains that you might find in here. For example, I found baggage labels in here already that have been ingested on the ground while we've been taxiing onto the stand, and stuff like that that you want to have removed. Alright then, moving on along the leading edge of the wings, we check for any signs of visible damage, leakage of fluids, and stuff like that. Reaching the outside part of the wing and having a look at the lights over here, you want to check for operative or inoperative lights. Now, the way the light works are going to depend on the aircraft in question. For example, on the Boeing 737NG, you would have 2 light bulbs, and one of which needs to work at least. On Airbus aircraft, things are usually a little bit different. For example, over here we see 2 lights illuminated at the same time. However, in the real world you would only have one of the 2 illuminated, depending on whether the nav and logo light switch is in the position 1 or 2. So if the thing was inoperative, you'd have to switch it to the other system. Moving on to the aft part of the wings, you will typically find some static wick dischargers over here, like the ones that we have on the plane over here. Now, the number of which are going to depend on the airplane type in question, and you just want to make sure that the number required for your airplane type is actually there. And if some are missing, usually you will be able to still dispatch under MEL, and then it'll have to be replaced over time. Moving on to the main gear, now they're on top of the stuff that we've checked on the nose wheel already, which we're going to check on here as well. Something that comes in very important on the main gear are the brake wear indicator pins. Now, those are usually pins that you will find sticking out somewhere on the sides over here, Now, I'm just looking around this model of the fly-by-wire A320, and it looks like the brake wear indicator pins are actually not modeled, but those would be some pins sticking out over here, and the way these are designed is that by the time the brakes are used up throughout their service life, the pins would get smaller and smaller until they're eventually flush with the metal. And when that happens, that's the point where the brakes have to be replaced. Apart from that, you're checking for all the good stuff that you have already checked on the nose wheel assembly as well. Alright then, moving on towards the aft part of the plane, there are going to be a couple of things that you will find in here that are going to be interesting. For one hand side, you will have the outflow valve, and this needs to be fully open on the ground, unless it is closed for cold weather operations when the airplane has been parked, but normally you need to find an outflow valve that's fully open. Likewise on the stabilizer, you check for any signs of visible damages, and lastly we are then moving to the lower part of the aft belly of the plane, and this is where you check for any kind of scrape marks. Now, depending on the airplane type in question, you may or may not have a tail skid over here. You need to check the operations manual of your airplane type in question to see if there is a tail skid or not, but in any case you want to make sure that there has not been any tail strike, and therefore you're going to check the aft part of the plane. Alright then, moving forward, we basically check the very same things that we checked on the other hand side already. So I'm not going to go over that again, but instead I'm going to finish this video over here. Now, just to be entirely sure, this video is not a complete tutorial on how to do walkaround on an Airbus A320, but it gives you a general idea of how walkarounds are conducted along commercial aircraft. Obviously, the flight crew operations manual of the airplane in question that you are flying is going to give you guidance on exactly what kind of things to check on your airplane type. Now with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. I do hope that this sheds a little bit of light into the topic of walkarounds and into how I'm doing them and what I'm checking. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope that you've enjoyed this one, and if you did, then be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like in YouTube as well, and if you're up for more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Finally, I would like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope that you've enjoyed this one, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one. If you really love what I'm doing here, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Until then, thank you very much, and see you all again on the next one.